as the metal door slid to a close behind me, and all signal to the night rock was cut. It was obvious I was in a trap. Not that that was much of a surprise. This target had taken us over a month to track down to this derelict ship, and each step had been either a trap or a false lead. A trap meant I was in the right place. The room I was in was massive, some 60-foot high ceilings, with 100 yards to the opposite side, where my target stood in the open doorway, still wearing the same uniform as in the pics Cassian had given me. Scattered about the room, behind a dozen metal emplacements, were a trio of troops each. One member manning a rotary C-bots, and the others using appeared to be standard A-bots, each seemingly tricked out with all the bells and whistles. "Nice of you to make it, Han." My target's voice carried the distance without needing to be shouted. "As you can see, this is a trap. Yet another test of your abilities, one could say." He gestured across the room. "Should be a fair test. And if you make it past the door before it closes, I'll even tell you about the revivers. More precisely, the revealers." I could feel my pulse speed up at the mention. "And if I don't?" He began to turn to walk away as he answered. "You'll die in the self-destruct, of course." Pausing in his step, he continued. "I should mention something regarding the revealers. You actually know their founder. Personally, from what I understand." And with that, a klaxon and announcement sounded over the broken speaker system, making the fact that the nearest power plants were going critical in 30 seconds very clear. My target continued to walk away, allowing the auto sensors to delay the closing of the door, meaning I had about 6 seconds to cross 300 feet, as well as deal with the 30-odd armed killers that were about to start trying to cut me down in hails of metal stakes. Drawing both of my rotators clear of their holsters, arming and configuring them with but a thought for the first time in literally thousands of years, all before I had even moved an entire step forward, allowing myself to simply move after my target. I could hear the weapons of all the assembled killers begin to cycle and fire, and began moving and reacting automatically in flurries of motion and skill few still living had ever witnessed. Time to take out the trash and get some answers. By the 9 and 4, welcome back to the library. I am the Recorder, and in this entry we conclude our look at one of the oldest weapon systems to ever have been in the realms, the B.O.L.T.S launcher. Regular visitors and perceptive patrons of the library will already know that in Part 1, we covered the early years of this weapon, from its origin as an evolution of the crossbow, to its slow but inexorable spread across the forces of Jam'mar as a reliable and powerful weapon, treasured by its owners. We explored in brief how, with the exception of its rotary version, itself created only mere years after the standard form, it went mostly unchanged for literal ages, to include both wars of feather and scale, as well as the reign that followed and nearly 2 ages beyond that. I don't care who you are, that is an impressive feat of engineering, design, and craftsmanship. However, during the mid to later years of the Age of Valor, the secrets of Crystech were being discovered and explored, and thus A new look at the honorable weapon system was in order. This process took many years, as the dwarves are not keen on revisiting their creations, and aim to make such revisions the final word on the matter. Advances in alloys, as well as other discoveries, allowed for the eventual production of 2 new versions of the weapon, the first of which, the Advanced B.O.L.T.S system, again available in all the normal variants of size, type, and of course, rotary configurations, was a refinement of the basic technology used in the system in every way, optimizing already existing systems and processes such that a new barrel component was added to utilize the benefit from these gains in efficiency, all further to enhance the weapon's function at no additional cost in energy. This barrel used the now excess per shot energy to impart an intense spin to the stake as it is fired, increasing its range and further augmenting its potent armor penetration capabilities. Most importantly, to its adaptation, it was fully compatible with all previous versions of ammo boxes and cylinders. This made it an easy sell to the various powers to upgrade their forces with a weapon that was both familiar and better, while allowing their massive stocks of ammo to remain relevant without the tedious reloading of munitions into a new mag cylinder or clip, or the costs associated with replacing those reserves. A-bolts, as they tend to be lazily called, are slowly becoming the standard variant of the weapon across the realms, as there is only a slight increase in cost over the standard older version. This is the result of the changes in quality of components not coming at either significant cost in materials or time. Even with the addition of the barrel, it was still only a nominal increase in cost overall, allowing for their very reasonable price point. The second of the new lines fully incorporated the available techniques of Crystech in its creation, and, as such, is fully powered by Cryst energy, and uses a power pack instead of any removable ammo box or cylinder. The C-Bolt system uses conjured ammunition, the barrel of the A variant, and is designed to be upgradable with various Crystech enhancements and modular with those upgrades, able to affect the ammunition as well as the weapon itself. These Crystech modules can impart anything from elemental damage, to even more increased range, to specific anti-target munitions, as well as much more. The core functions of the weapon, ammunition creation and firing, are the only fixed functions of the weapon, allowing tinkerers and fiddlers across the world and wider realms to add and tweak their own weapons, once they manage to get their hands on such treasures. The cost of a fully tricked out C system was an order of magnitude beyond even the most richly enjeweled of its cousins, and thus was a weapon of the elite and powerful, royal guards and holy defenders. To those with the skill and knowledge to build them, however, the increase in cost is far more manageable. The most attractive trait of the C system is that they can be linked together via a base station. This base station can enhance and grant benefits to all connected units at once for a much lower energy cost than if each were to enhance themselves. This also allows for a wider selection of ammunition and setting options, as only the base unit will require the upgrades and modules, potentially allowing a dozen or more individual systems, either emplaced or manned, or automatically aimed and fired, to benefit from such a base unit. This dramatically reduces the cost overall, both in Cryst and other materials, and can allow a small community potent defensive abilities where otherwise they might only be able to arm a couple of guards. Here, before we discuss the most recent and advanced variant, let us discuss how the weapon actually functions. The key to the weapon lies in its creator's aptitude and talent for the cultivation and utilization of various forms of crystals in their crafts. The dwarves are renowned across the realms for their skills in growing crystals that can interact with various energies in a number of ways, pulling heat from the air or absorbing wayward magical energies, along with a plethora of other variations. It is an alloy of crystal and metal, which is twice forged, that is the key to this system's firing and resetting. This alloy is able to be switched between the two differently forged states, such as a spring held tight or at full extension as their natural forms, which is the current form, and thus how it interacts with the world around it, is toggleable via a small burst of energy provided by the power cog, which is far less than that would be necessary to propel the stake under normal circumstances. When the stake is fired, the spring and piston system will propel the stake forward, launching it and firing it with immense force. Upon reaching the end of its travel, it receives a second burst of energy, which resets the spring in its other form, sending it back and resetting the weapon for the next shot. The ammunition stake itself is not just a pointed shaft of metal, but instead a four-edged, drill-looking projectile. These edges provide spin in flight and thus increased accuracy. With the advent of the A and C lines, the extra spin added by their barrels allows for the stakes to actually drill in to the armor or other surfaces, providing even greater penetration ability. When a cylinder or box is loaded with stakes, each must be cranked into place. This is how the energy for the weapon's function is stored. There exist machines or other tools for reloading these automatically, particularly for the large cylinders of the rotary version, and these are a common sight in garrison houses or even hunting lodges or inns that see a large number of users of this weapon as customers. This tedium is rectified in the C variant as well as the final variant to C development, as both are capable of creating their own munitions, albeit in different and altogether separate methods. This comes at the cost of needing to power the weapon system. While the C variant can be operated at a very modest and reasonable rate of power usage, our final variant is anything but reasonable in its power consumption. Our final variant, the crystalline offensive, personal, light, normal, or heavy target stake, or COLTS launcher more commonly, sees its development in the tumultuous years of the Tempest of Scales, and by one of the heroes of that crisis, Ortis Skychild Olon. By further incorporating dwarven crystal lore and technology to create self-replicating crystalline ammunition capable of being infused with any number of energies to enhance its destructive force, the COTS launcher systems that he armed his articulated arms with supplemented the CONTS launcher he personally carried along with them for himself. These weapon systems, while being intensive in energy requirements and capable of correspondingly large degrees of damage and destruction, were also extremely expensive to build, but were a key factor in overcoming the threats of that calamity. By using energy to fuel the rapid growth of the ammunition crystals, and then further imbue the crystal projectiles with the configured energies determined by the user, this weapon system takes all the advancements of previous variants, and by adding a physical, non-summoned, and replicating ammunition source, creates a system that, while not being reasonable to build in cost for either infantry or personal use, beyond as gifts or exotic items for the rich and powerful, This system has solved one of the greatest issues faced by the realms in the matter of space combat: range. The problem is the limited range afforded to standard crisp-based energy weapons, which had long been a problem for the war planners and designers of the realms. Typically, to achieve the ranges required to be able to compete with alternatives such as ballistic or energy weapons of the other powers, particularly the Teltechians or the Ancient Empire, the weapons would be prohibitively large and costly, with entire systems required to keep the blast of the weapon a coherent and effective projectile at the range required for space combat. This left the realms with reduced tactical options when it came to ship-to-ship combat amongst the stars. This new system, however, was easy enough to scale up while still being vastly smaller than previous weapons of equivalent range and damage. And, again, with a physical, non-conjured ammunition base for the energies to be infused into, and able to be launched with accuracy at the ranges required with ease, this was a revolution for starship weapons technology for the realms, and sees a not insignificant amount of coin flow into its creators' coffers as a result. These weapons are the mainstay of most vessels in one form or another, and serve as reliable and effective weapons, with a relatively large and limiting cost in energy to operate them on a personal scale being effectively a moot point when compared to other systems on a starship. From their humble beginnings as tools to help clear tunnels and caves, to their use as one of the realm's main starship weapon system bases, this invention of the dwarves has been present at the sides of heroes, villains, and everyone in between over the ages, and will do so far into the foreseeable future. I hope you now have a fuller and better appreciation for these weapons, my perceptive patrons and regular viewers. I, as always, have been the Recorder, and until you next find your way back to the library for our next entry, I once more thank you for your attention, interest, and support. It means the realms to me. Thank you. Now, by the 9 and 4, be well, take care of yourselves and each other. On the table before me was a data crystal, and on this side of the door was a huge central corridor, allowing me an easy escape route from the derelict. It was clear the target wasn't here, and may have never been. Again, with the smoke and the mirrors. As the door finished closing behind me, cutting the smell of burning flesh and warped metal off as the doors closed, a voice called out, "Not bad, Han. Take your prize and go. You don't have long. Better luck next time." His voice trailed off as the explosions began to tear across the derelict. I grabbed the crystal, summoned my suit, and made good my escape. Once more, a trap and a breadcrumb. The data crystal would be encoded and would take some time to unlock. And given the hassle that everything that is involved this target seems to entail, I imagine the data is nothing but a mess of half-truths and out-of-context info points. More time required to sift through and discover the importance of the data, and then move on to the next step. It was also clear that this target was aware of my hatred of the revivers, and is clearly attempting to use that to exercise control. Well, this would normally serve to anger me further, as I flew my suit back to the Night Rock, relaying orders to the captain to set course back to base as soon as I was on board. I wasn't angry. Not even upset at yet again being denied my prey. Nah, I've been around far too long to be getting upset over such minor things. As I entered the suit bay, and the pod began to take hold and secure the suit, I felt the ship jump to full speed. less than a second from being secured to on our way. I smiled. My unit was the best. Sometimes I took it for granted. As I headed to my office to write my after-action report, I glanced at the crystal that was the fruit of this action, curious as to what it would reveal. If you'd like to contribute to the further exploration and explanation of the realms, please consider leaving a comment, a like, and sharing the video around. I read all the comments and make efforts to reply to each. Thank you for helping to grow the channel, and know I look forward to each and every one of your comments. Other methods of support can be found in the channel's description. Thank you for watching.